Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to GlacierTV's presentation of the Prototype GT Challenge here on iRacing from Virginia International Raceway. Joining me in the booth for this race will be David Ward, Yoni Backman, and Dan Blake. And David, I'm going to come to you first. Of all of the GT tracks, this is by far the toughest.
Without a shadow of a doubt, this course is tight, twisty. It's going to make overtaking the slower classes even more difficult with this track layout. There's some really fast sections. We've got the big long straight just after the tree, and then that comes up to the twisty downhill section. The Proto GT cars are just going to be all over each other. We're going to see a lot of accidents, I think, as well. A lot of guys like pushing on the edge. So I'm looking forward to this race. So yeah, bring it on.
And Dan, it's also, they call it the green hell for a reason, because it really is the green hell over here.
Yeah, and also these drivers have actually got a bit of a lucky escape. I remember commentating a Targa 3-hour race round it. That was absolutely enthralling and on a much bigger track as well, but I still think we're in for a great treat of 65 minutes of racing today.
65 minutes worth of racing, 3 different car classes. You have the LMP2 Honda Performance Development ARX car. You also have in the GT1 class the Corvette C6R, and representing the GT2s you have the Ford GTs. A total of 32 cars will be making their way around this 3.27 mile 20 corner racetrack. David, I think in some way the guys are happy that they're running this layout and not the infamous Grand West track.
The Grand West track is a monster in itself because of the other infield section. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're happy with this layout. Just because of the big long straight, it's going to make it a little bit easier for the prototype cars to get past the slower classes. But having said that, I'd like to see him race on that layout one day.
So would I, and footage coming up on your screen momentarily. Practice, we have ourselves about 1 minute and 20 seconds remaining of practice. Kind of having a quick look at Tim Clayson in the LMP car. And one of the issues here, David, as well, is that the LMP cars aren't that much faster than the GT1 cars, especially in the first couple of laps. Running down, for example, Madison Avenue down into the roller coaster, going to make things difficult when these cars go side by side.
Yeah, the way the GT cars, they've just got the rug run. I mean, the CR6 and the Ford GT are very, very closely matched in straight line speed. But the prototype cars, they make up all of theirs in the twisty section. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out, because I haven't actually seen these cars all race together on this layout.
And Dan, we've got ourselves 65 minutes worth of racing here. These cars are going to have to make one pit stop. It's a long track, and that means that strategy will really come into play here.
Yeah, it's one of the good things that iRacing have done, making these races longer, is that the strategy does play a part. You can't just go on one tank of fuel and try and eke it out to the end. It's probably more than likely, if not almost certain, that everyone's going to make at least one pit stop. So the timing of the pit stops, do you do it to avoid traffic? Do you do it to avoid traffic, or do you do it just to try and get some clean air? It's going to be very, very crucial, really, I think, the strategy in this race.
So then, to run through your starting grid here for the iRacing.com Prototype GT Challenge from Virginia International Raceway, and starting on pole position in the LMP2 class will be Riku, our sports car lover, with a time of 1 minute 33.678. Just 2 tenths of a second back behind him is Mads Burr, who will line up alongside him in row number 1. In row 2 will be Tim Clayton and Marco Arcadonio, and in row 3 will be Paul Ilbrink and Roderick Cronin. In row number 4 will be Nick Thiessen and Arcadius Newman, and then in row number 5 will be Christos Polonis and Jan Rockenstar. And then to move over to the GT1 class, first of all, with Kei Koshube once again leading the way, Florian Denard will line up alongside him in row number 6, Richard Avery and Jack Sadrick will line up in row number 7, Spano Laniote and Marcel Wiemers will line up in row number 8, then Lieven Drogonen and Kieran Pace will line up in row number 9, Peter Ridley and Patrick Berry will line up in row 10, and Kevin Parrish and Carol Shakurili will line up in row number 11. Then Becky Carrier will line up your GT1 field, with Nick Prestige starting in the 24th position, representing the GT2 cars. Eric Vadorf will line up in the 25th position, Jonathan Fuller in 26th, Robert De Rouge in 27th, Bogdan Katwick in 28th, Thomas Van Boosel in 29th, Kieran Riley in 30th position, Jonathan Bootle in 31st, and then Andy Frame lining up 32nd and last in the GT2 class. And importantly, David, we have more GT1 cars than GT2s and LMPs. And once we get into the lap traffic situation, that's going to make things very interesting, because you'll have a lot of GT1 cars lapping GT2 cars, but then the LMP cars got to get around all of them.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the times for the GT1 cars, they're really close together. You're looking at like the top the top half of the field are literally separated by 5 tenths. So those guys are going to be going nose to tail. And once the prototype cars come up, they're going to find it extremely difficult to get by, especially going up the S's. Once you get behind a GT car there, you just have to sit back and wait. There's no way of actually making a move up there.
And breaking news from pit road, Q Alatalo did not make the grid in time, and we know what the penalty is for that, David. If you miss the grid, you're going to have to start this race on pit road, and at a track like this, which is so narrow, Rico Alatalo has pretty much sealed his fate here, and it's going to be a challenge for him to even get into the top 5 in this race.
If he actually gets into the top 5, I'll be really surprised. Yeah, starting from pit road is certainly not an ideal situation, especially on this track and in this type of racing.
But Dan, importantly, we have three classes of cars represented here today. You see already the GT1 class is beginning to drop back a little bit. Keiko Shube leading the GT1 class. We saw him last week doing some terrific driving. And that GT1 class really is going to be the one that's going to be a lot of attention put towards, because it's a very close field over there.
Very close to a lot of cars, and as you said, very impressive from Keiko Shube, and he actually leads the overall championship with 1,179 points ahead of Nick Mastigi, who's the GT2 leader in points with 1,019 points. So Kashubi actually has the overall championship lead, and he's done very, very well in the GT1 class this year. So it'll be interesting to see if he can back this up with another win, or if anyone will be able to challenge him.
So the cars currently working themselves down Madison Avenue as they're working their way down towards the roller coaster. Don't forget, coming to you next week on Glacier TV, the first round of the Neo Endurance Series. That will be from Sebring International Raceway. Got time more information for that? Go to GlacierTV.com. Glacier TV also bring you a number of races of this season's Prototype GT Challenge Series here live on Glacier TV, as the cars are now working themselves down towards the Hog Pen as they're going to get set to go racing for 65 minutes around the green hell that is Virginia International Raceway. 3.27 miles in length, 20 corners, and you can't take your eyes away from the steering wheel for just 1 second, otherwise you'll end up in a world of trouble. Mads Burr begins to build up the pace, the green flag's in hand, and we are racing here as Virginia. Is a good start there by Mads Burr, putting himself up to an early lead. Tim Clayton's in the second position, under a little bit of pressure from Marco as they come down into turn number 1, but it's a bit of a logjam now. Ricky Adatalo comes out of pit road. Let's see where he feeds in, and he'll feed in the head of the GT2 cars, but importantly, behind all of the GT1s, and they're going 2 feet wide right now as they're trying to work themselves down into NASCAR bend, turn number 3.
Yeah, it's very important to see if Ricky can keep out of trouble on these first couple of laps, because as we know, the GT1 cars are actually faster down the straight than Ricky Alatalo will be, so he'll be running at a similar pace these first couple of laps. It's really crucial for his race that he avoids the trouble and takes his time. A bit of patience here will do him the world of good in the long run.
It will indeed, and Ricky Alatalo struggling to find a way to get past all of these GT1 cars as they work themselves now through the climbing S's, turn 7, 8, 9 and 10, as they work themselves towards the South Bend and then towards the famous Oak Tree Corner, the double apex right-hander. And for Ricky, he's got himself some issues as well. We'll come back to that momentarily, but meanwhile, in the LMP2 class, Mads Burr is leading the way. He's got himself now about a 0.6 of a second gap over Tim Clayton as they work themselves now down into the roller coaster for the first time. they'll work themselves through this corner, then down into the hog pen to complete lap number 1. And out front in the LMP class, David, it looks as though right now it is all about Mads Burr in that number 18 PlayStation car.
Yeah, Mad Burr is absolutely setting tremendous pace. He's already gapped second and third, who are going to be having a nice little battle. He's having a look down onto the inside of turn 1, thinks better of it. But yeah, Mad's just like, he's got himself a nice little cushion. We'll see how the rest of the race pans out. I mean, this is a long race with especially when traffic comes into play. I think that's going to be the crucial bit. And we've got position number 4 just taking a spin there, so just under braking.
Yeah,
that's our LMP2 championship leader, Paul Wilbrink. He came into this race leading Mads Burr by about 180 points, but that is not a good start, so Paul Wilbrink could be hoping to recover from that, and he's going a bit wide again. Oh, that's probably his race done for Paul Wilbrink. That is really bad luck, and as we were saying before about patience at the start of the race, I think one of the Corvettes there maybe had a bit of a lack of patience to get past a slower LMP2 car.
Yeah, and Paul Wilbrink is going to try and bring that car down towards pit road, but he will get the message, the infamous message from his pit crew that there is too much damage to that race car. He is currently working himself in the mid portion of the racetrack. He's being swarmed by GT2 cars, trying to keep out of the way right now, and this is the worst thing that could happen to Paul Wilbrink in that number 5 Radical Steel Series car. And every time for some reason we have GlacierTV in the Radical Steel Series car, something happens wrong, but he's still got himself almost half a lap to try and do before he can actually get that car down on towards pit road. He started this race down in 5th position, moved up to 4th at the end of lap number 1 before that incident, but now is struggling, and he's at pretty much the complete rear of the field. Let's check very quickly in on GT1 World, and Kei Kashube's got himself already a 1.5 second gap over Florian Denard in that battle for the first position. And David, right now, Kei Kashube looking as though he is stretching up that gap, and it's the rear of his car, so he's just making all of those other cars eat dust.
Yeah, he's got clean air, empty track in front of him. He just wants to gap Florian and just get up there really. And Riku Alatella's making his way up to Florian there, so he's got some serious pace. But yeah, back to the GT1 class. They're all quite close together. I do imagine later on they will be stretching it out a little bit on the fuel mileage. But yeah, let's see how this pans out.
And of course, last week we saw a number of different fuel strategies coming into play, especially in the GT1 class. The last thing you're going to want is to have 12, 13 LMP cars swarming past you, or to negotiate 6, 7 different GT2 cars. And Dan, in the GT1 class, it's more than just about getting this car around the racetrack. You can argue that the GT1 drivers have the toughest time on this racetrack here today.
Yeah, because not only are they're trying to get past these slower GT2 cars, but they've also got to keep a lookout for the LMP2. So, being the middle class, and as I agree with you, Will, they have got the toughest task of the race, which makes the drivers have to put more of their skill and more of their experience and knowledge in point class racing to the test here. And Riku Alatalo going past another one of the GT1 cars. He seems to have some real problems there with his connection there. We'll have to see how that goes.
Meanwhile, Jack Sedgwick looking down to the inside. He will try and complete the pass as they come into the roller coaster. He goes sideways on Jack Sedgwick and isn't able to get the job done on Michael Wiemers there in the number 4 car. Of course, Wiemers is teammates to Kei Kashube while they're running very similar paint schemes on this race car. But David, a very close call there for Jack Sedgwick. He almost outshot his braking there, and that meant that he had to stay in that 5th position.
Yeah, just when you're battling so hard, even the slight, you go past your braking zone just by a foot, and you can really mess things up. He was lucky to keep it on track there, but I'm sure he'll pick up speed and getting that attack back. I'm just keeping an eye on the GT2 field with Nick, because he just seems to be pushing out a big gap now.
Yeah, Nick Frasigi, of course, was the class of the GT2 field last week. This time he's doing exactly the same thing. But meanwhile, check in the battle between Roger Cronin and Nick Thiessen. No, we're not. Actually, we're going to check in the battle between Bob Van Ketwick in the GT2 class. And there's cars actually in the GT2 class going very closely together, Dan.
Yeah, the GT2 cars are quite together, and also Paul Wilbrink is recovering and trying to go through them as well, so they're going to have to be wary for him. But the GT2 class very close racing, as you say, Will. So it'd be interesting to see how that transpires. But at the moment, I think Nick Vestigi is starting to try and pull away a bit here from Eric Breidorf and Jonathan Fuller, three of the well-known 4GT faces in this championship.
Meanwhile, your top 5 in each class in the LMP2 class, it's Mads Burr leading the way by 2.1 seconds over Tim Clayton. Marco is running in the 3rd position. Roger Cronin is in 4th, and he's got Nick Thiessen right behind him, just 0.3 of a second back. That is what you were seeing on your screen momentarily. And the GT1 class, you got Kei Kashibe leading away from Florian Denard, Richard Avery in 3rd, Michael Wien was in 4th, Jack Cedric in 5th. In the GT2 class, we have Nick Vestigi in 1st, Eric Verdorf in 2nd, Jonathan Fuller in 3rd, Bob van Katwijk in 4th even, Robert de Rouge running out your top 5. And apologies for anyone looking at, we have a GT Corvette incident going on, by the way, on the racetrack, and I'm going to hand it over to Dan. Kevin Parrish, I believe.
The big battle there also in the GT1s. We've got Joykin and Ridley, Parrish, Cedric all driving together, and this is fantastic. There's a group of 4 of them there as they coming now down towards the end of the, I think they're the end of the lap. They're down at the beginning of the lap, in fact. But some great racing, and also you've got Kieran Peace, who's in front of them. He might get dragged into it as well. But some fantastic battling further down in that Corvette field.
And we
also,
just heard that Rico Altala has parked it in the wall, so we'll try and get a report about that later.
yeah, and that was an incident, I believe, going down in the 1st sector of this lap. But we've had some issues trying to get with the telemetry of Rico Adatalo's car, but it looked as though it was on the towards NASCAR bend, just coming out of NASCAR bend. He overshot into turn number 4, put it into the wall, and he is out of the race. Things going from bad to worse for Rico Adatalo. And very quickly, we'd like to apologise. So if you notice on the side panel of our screen, we are missing 1 driver from each of the classes. We have no idea why. The telemetry is throwing a couple of issues up, but we will sort the issue out if we can. Meanwhile, Mads Burr has now got himself a 3.3 second gap in the LMP class, but in the battle for P2, Marco in that number 13 car is just about 0.2 of a second behind Tim Clayton and looking very racy right now.
Yeah, it's put them under some real pressure as they now come up towards, going to go up towards Oak Street now and onto the long back straight. Now, it'll be interesting to see what sort of jagged effect, and Kim Clayton took a bit of the grass there after see, and also Arcadia gets a bit of a back end twitch to now come down the back straight and go up towards Madison Avenue. But and also the 2 behind them, Cronin and Thiessen, are still battling quite fiercely. So LMP, we've got two groups of 2 drivers fighting hard, but the one for second place is what we're looking at as Clayton's and Academio battling for P2 in class, and they're coming up across 4 GT traffic now as well.
And Aki Adono is looking very close, however, to the rear of Tim Clayton. And this is where, David, the traffic could come into play. Because the LMP class have to get themselves on the traffic as quickly as possible, yes. But you alluded to it at the start of this broadcast. It's a very narrow track here. And at some point, the track is only 2 lanes wide. And if you have GT2 or GT1 class running side by side of each other, the LMP class has literally got to sit in wait, and it can really bunch this LMP field back up together. However, right now, it looks as though that Clayton's might get the upper hand and work themselves up the S's once again.
Yeah, sometimes you kind of have to drop back a little bit when you're on the track instead of driving right up behind the slower classes, and kind of plan your move ahead. It's really quite difficult. It's a good skill to learn about and progress with. But just watching Marco, he just managed to get ahead of the GT, but he's got 2 people battling now as they go onto the Oak Tree, onto the start. So they should be able to clear these. But yeah, the field's quite spread out at the moment. I'm quite surprised.
But this is the thing that we were talking about. The GT traffic, this isn't going to be an issue. The GT2 traffic. When we come to the GT1 traffic, they're not going to have the luxury of being able to just sweep past the drivers on this back straightaway that is Madison Avenue. They're going to have to work for it as they come down towards the roller coaster. And that will make things very, very interesting. And let's not forget, right now, they have caught up to the rear of Mads Burr, who struggled in this traffic. So now the 3 cars at the front of this LMP field are separated by less than 1.5 seconds on the racetrack. Mads Burr able to get himself a good run. But look at Tim Clayton. He's going to look down to the inside, down to the outside for the race lead. And he's so lucky there, is Mads Burr, that there's a GT2 car pretty much in the way coming down into turn number 1. But Tim Clayton's there, Dan, was looking for the race lead.
Yeah, he got a much better drive coming out of the hog pen. I think Mads Burr had to pull out of the gas a little bit there with the GT2 car, but now it's come the other way, and now Burr gets a bit of a favour from the, I think that's Nick Vestigi car that's in the way of the other two, so now Mads Burr can have a chance to pull away.
Oh.
That was very, very close there between Tim Clayton. Contact there with Marco and Nick Vestigi off the racetrack, and he's going to lose that GT2 lead, and it looks like Vestigi's day could be done as Eric Vadorf there looking as though he is going to go up a position, although he was of course scored 1 lap down. No, in fact he is going to go to the point in the GT2 class there, and also Jonathan Fuller is going to get ahead. Nick Vestigi is in a world of trouble right now.
And Marco Acadonio is in a world of trouble as well. He's hit the wall, and all of a sudden this Proto GT race, as you said before, Accident Phil has just completely exploded into life.
And you talk about that, David, you talk about races that these drivers have to give the extra 10%. For example, if you have a look at the NASCAR series, think about places like Bristol, Martinsville, Daytona. You have a look at the IndyCar series, think about tracks like Pocono. Think about GT racing, it always comes down to places like VIR. And for Marco and for Nick Vestigi, it just went wrong for them by no fault of their own.
Yeah, I think Nick Vestigi and Marco, it was just being a little bit over aggressive there. It could have sat behind Nick. It's a long race. If it had had the pace, he would have caught up. But look at Mads now. He was nice and calm, calculated through the traffic, and now he's got a really big lead over second place. So yeah, you just got to take things easy around here. You can't rush it.
And you saw replays up on your screen momentarily with both Nick Vestigi and Marco's incident. But Dan, you alluded to a very good point there. Mads Burr able to get himself up a 3-second gap in that melee, and that all started when Tim Clayton was held up behind Nick Vestigi as they worked themselves through NASCAR Bend and turn number 4, and that was what gave him the majority of the time there. And Tim Clayton's just struggled ever since then. As soon as they came out of the left corner, working themselves through Snake.
Yeah, they caught Vestigi in quite a bad position for them where it was slow anyway. I think Burr was rubbing his hands with glee because Clayton really was putting the pressure on Burr, made to move around the outside. He was unlucky that he was blocked in by 4GT there, and I think he saw that as maybe an opportunity to take the lead for sure. And in the end, it came back to really haunt them because they lost a lot of time. Mads Burr just started to pull away, and now they come up towards the GT1 traffic as well.
But let's go back to this incident, David. And there's always the challenges between, the LMP cars and the GT cars over when do you make those passes. And at the end of the day, yes, the LMP drivers do make some big, bold moves, but can you really expect to lose 3 seconds in 2 corners?
It's all part of multi-class racing. I don't think you should be overly aggressive in the traffic, because you have to remember that those guys are racing as well. And we've just got Tim's just slid off on the track. He's rejoining now. I think he got caught out in the braking zone behind one of the GT1 cars, so he's lost even more time to Mads there. Obviously the GT1 traffic is playing into Mads' hands here.
And I tell you what, Mads Burr is having a pretty easy time of it right now. Let's start with Rico Atali, for example, not being able to get to the grid in time, therefore having to start from pit road. Then you talk about Tim Clayton having his issues, and you also talk about Mark having his issues of his own. Mads Burr is getting all the luck in the world right now, as Mads Burr is now just coming down to the inside, managing to complete the pass there on the Corvette of Berkey Kakra, as well himself down Madison Avenue. It does look, however, though, Dan, that we normally talk about the fact that the GT1s are the fastest car in the straight line. Today, because of the amount of wing that these GT1 cars are having to run, that isn't the same.
No, I noticed that myself actually, that the GT1 cars are struggling a little bit compared to the LMP2 cars, but the LMP2 drivers will be liking that because usually they have quite a bit of trouble on the straight lines with the Corvettes, as we saw at Zandvoort last week. And there's a battle also for P2 in the GT2 class between Bob Van Kuchwick and Eric Vidorf. They're just coming around Oak Tree now, and it's Van Kuchwick who leads from Vidorf as they come down the back straight towards Madison Avenue. So that's a good battle there going for second in the GT2 class.
Tim's coming to the pits now, so obviously that's been... I don't know whether he hit the tyres or not, but he's obviously going to get some repairs done and try and get out into clear air. Maybe just an early pit stop, change his strategy. See
Well,
if
I'm
he
having
can,
a look. I'm having a look to his car, and there is damage to both the front and the rear of that. To the front of the car, that front splitter is completely bent in the wrong direction. The rear, it looks like he's also had a bump on that as well. So he's stood on pit road getting some repairs to that race car. Probably expecting to be in there for about a minute or so. And the issue is, in fact, now he's out and away. But the issue is that that's going to drop him pretty much to the rear of the LMP field. And more importantly, he's now got to lap some of this GT1 traffic once again. Meanwhile, we're having a look at the second place battle, and this is between Nick Thiessen and Roderick Cronin. They are very closely separated on the racetrack as they're working themselves through Oak Tree Corner once again. And Nick Thiessen's managed to get that gap down to about a second, but run a little bit wide there down the exit of Oak Tree Corner. As they come down Madison Avenue, you can just see how important it is to get a good line through turn number 11 and 12, Oak Tree.
Yeah, a good run off of Oak Tree sets you up nicely for the straight. The last thing you want to be doing is losing a tenth or two on the exit of that corner, because it will affect the amount of time it takes you to get up to full speed, and that can cost you even more. It costs you have 2-3 tenths of a second just by making a small little mistake. So these drivers will be trying to make every lap and make it count in that corner, just because it's such an important corner on this racetrack, in my opinion.
And guys, if you like GT racing, we've got a ton of GT racing coming to you on Glacier TV over the course of the next couple of weeks, starting tomorrow on Monday with the VIR GT series. Start time for that will be a 7:15 GMT in the evening, and that will be virtual racing GT series. And also on Sunday, starting at 1800 hours GMT, the Neo Endurance series, 2.5 hours around the Sebring International Raceway with the LMP2, the GT1 and GT2 classes that you're seeing here today. So much more GT racing to come here on Glacier TV, as we're currently working ourselves with about 20 minutes of this race scored complete. Mads Burr is still your race leader in the LMP2 class. He's now got himself a 17-second gap over Roderick Cronin, who is still battling with Nick Thiessen in that battle for the third position. In the in the GT1 class, you got yourself Keiko Shube leading the way by about 5 seconds over Florian Denard, who in turns of second ahead of Richard Avery. And then in the GT2 class, you have Jonathan Fuller from Bob Van Kuchwick from Eric Vidorf. And meanwhile, we're going to check in very quickly on Kevin Parrish. And Kevin Parrish is very close right now in that battle for the 10th position.
Yeah, I think Kevin Parrish may have made a pit stop because he wasn't that far down the field before. It seems to drop back, and now he's going to have a look down into Madison Avenue to make it stick, and the car is sort of conceded a position there. He thought better of it. That's a good move there from Kevin Parrish on Carol Schleich for 10th place in class. And the next one on his list now is Becca Karacha.
One of the things I want to have a look at as well is this battle for the second and third position in the GT1 class. And David, right now you have Richard Avery about 1 second, well about 1.4 seconds right now behind Florian Denard. And you've driven this GT1 car an awful lot. And getting within a second is one challenge, but then being able to close up that extra 8 tenths of a second to make that pass is another challenge completely, especially on a twisty track like this when these cars are forward to run pretty much maximum wing.
Also, especially with the class of drivers that we got in this field, because just looking at like some of the names you got, like, and Vidorf is
putting some real pressure on Bob Van Kuchwick again. That's that battle for second in GT2 as they go through. They're going through the roller coaster section.
Yeah, he's got past. He's got past. So he's moved himself up into the second position in class.
Great move there from Vidorf. They were two having a good battle for a while, and it seems that Vidorf has come up on top. So be interested now to see if how now he's passed the traffic. How long it take for him to go past Jonathan Fuller.
And Avery's caught up with Florian here, so they're going to be going at it nose to tail very soon.
I was just actually having a look at Richard Avery's car, and it looks great in a straight line, but he's struggling a little bit in the corners. Perhaps he's running a little bit less wing. However, David, the important thing is, if he can get past then to be fair, you're going to be single file for most of the corners in this racetrack, so you're not going to lose the position. So for Richard Avery, if he can get himself past Florian Denard, then he's got a good chance of keeping that position throughout the corners of this race. As Denard going actually a little bit sideways, so what's himself through turns 5 and 5A there.
Yeah, he's really pushing, he's really trying hard. I think he was obviously wants to get a nice setup as they go under the oak tree, because you get a big long draft there and into the braking zone. It's going to be tricky to pass there, especially these two guys. I've raced against them. They're both top class guys in the GT series. And so's Kieran as well. Kieran Pierce, he's another good driver, and Peter Ridley. So yeah, we've got a huge amount of talented GT1 drivers in this field, and I'm sure it's going to close up a little bit later once traffic starts to come into play.
It's going to close up very quickly because of the fact that ahead of this car they just lapped, they've got Keiko Schubert, so they've got Botham Ketwick, Eric Vadoff, and Jonathan Fuller, who's going to pretty much all be lapped in one course of this racetrack. So when you put that into perspective, all of a sudden it's going to make things very, very interesting. As Richard Avery, he's still about 6 tenths of a second back from Florian Denard, but as we saw in other battles on this racetrack, all it takes is one little move there, one car being held up for just one corner, and things go completely crazy here on this racetrack. Meanwhile, checking in on the GT2 field very quickly, Eric Vadoff, he's been able to pull out about a second now over Bodfrin Catwick, and again, David, you have raced with Eric Vadoff quite a lot. You're not necessarily always in the same class, but he's always at the top of his class when it comes to racing here.
Racing at the front, and it's no surprise to see him there. I'm a bit surprised that what happened to Nick, because it would have been nice to watch those guys battle again. But yeah, he's not that far behind Jonathan Fuller at the moment, is he? So with the traffic coming into play, Jonathan could get held up there, and you never know. Vadoff could close in.
But Dan, look at the way that Mads Burt is continuing to stretch out that that LMP2 lead even. Now up to 14 seconds almost over Roger Cronin. It comes down a little bit as they work themselves through traffic. As soon as he gets himself into clean air, he just continues to hammer that gap up. And Roger Cronin right now is also coming under a little bit of pressure from Nick Thiessen once again in that battle for the second position in the LMP2 class.
Also, we've lost Tim Kleisens. He came out of the snake corner, got on the grass, has gone into the barrier, so I think that's his afternoon done. So that's another one than the LMP2 cars that have had to retire from the race. But as you said there, Mads Bird definitely has managed to pull out a gap. He's got the break in traffic, and we've got P4 in LMP2 we're looking at now. This is Christos Panoulis up with and Arcadius Newman. They got traffic as well. They've got GT2 and GT1 cars there trying to go amongst, and I think this is going to help the car Christos Panoulis pull away a little bit there. He's caught them on a good position on the straight, so interesting to see just how much of an impact that has, because they were running quite close at the time, but the 31 car is able to pull out a bit of a gap there as they come to Madison Avenue.
Yeah, Arcadius is very lucky to get past the second one of those cars before they come down into the roller coaster. However, he lost a lot of time through Oak Tree Corner there, as he had to tiptoe around with the car ahead of him, as Christos Paulinus was able to literally get that pass done and stretch out about a 1 second gap in the course of that last lap alone. Last time by, they separated by just 1/10 of a second. This time by, Arcadius lost a full 1 second over Christos in that battle for the fourth position, David.
Yes, sorry, I was just watching Richard and Florian. They were just both getting held up by the GT2 class, but Richard Avery is really on it now. He's wanting to get by. I think he is a little bit faster, but because you get into that braking zone, you get into this area where you just end up not having that little bit of enough to get by, and this traffic's really playing into his hands, because if he can just catch him at the right point and onto the straight, I think he's going to have him.
But it all relies on your Oak Tree Corner, and you've driven this track before. That Oak Tree Corner, of all the corners on this racetrack, and there are many of them, perhaps, especially on this layout, it's most important to get yourself set up from that run down into the roller coaster.
Yeah, like that said earlier, you can easily lose like 2-3 miles an hour on that coming off that corner, and if you don't carry your speed or get the power early enough, you're just gonna your lap times will just suffer tremendously from it. But you know, you can't discount the twisty sections because if your car doesn't handle very well, you're gonna really struggle at the end of the race. And tyres are gonna play a big role in this as well with the guys, especially in the GT1 cars, because these can be really slidey later on in the race.
So then, we are currently about half an hour into this race. We're about 10 minutes away from halfway point into this race. Dan, this is when strategy is really going to come into play. I talked about this a little bit earlier on. These guys probably have got themselves topped up to the brim of fuel to make use of full strategies available. But as soon as we hit that halfway point, drivers will start coming down towards pit road. And on a track like this, you don't want to be stuck behind 2 or 3 cars battling for position. When you take, for example, this Richard Avery-Florian Denard battle into account, if you're an LMP2 driver, you do not want to get into the middle of this, because those drivers aren't going to give an inch right now.
They're not going to give an inch at all, and that'd probably be one of the better things for LMP2 drivers. They find themselves, because also Marcel Wiemers is slowly starting to pull himself in towards that battle as well, so it could be a fierce 3-car fight for second place. But it'd be interesting to see as tactical if one of those 3 involved in the battle takes a risk and decides to come in a bit earlier on the hope of getting maybe a clear track and being able to use those new tyres to an advantage, so he's able to pull clear when the others come into the pits. So there's a lot of different strategy connotations that can be put into place in this race, so yet to come.
And David, if I was Richard Avery, would you agree if I say that he should come down pit road first?
I think it's going to depend, like Dan said earlier, it's just going to depend on where you are. If you're coming up to slower GT traffic, then yes, come into the pits and let Florian lose time behind them, because it also helps if he can get into clean air as well. Like now, for instance, the LMP1 car is absolutely hounding him to try and get by, but this is going to play into Richard's hands, because Florian's might get held up going into the S's.
Very quickly to check into our GT2 battle. Right now, Jonathan Fuller's got himself about a 15-second gap over Eric Verdorf in the second position, but Bob and Catwick is starting to close down Eric Verdorf in that battle for the second position in Clark once again. Last time by, Bob and Catwick did a 1 minute 50.418. Compare that to Eric Verdorf's 1 minute 51.122. And Dan, it looks as though right now Catwick, who of course lost that position to Verdorf a little bit earlier on, in the latter stages of this run, it looks as though that car is coming better to him, which might set him up better towards the end of this race.
Maybe the car is set up to run better under low fuel, either that or maybe he's saved his tyres a bit extra than what Verdorf has had. But as you said, Van Katrick has certainly landed this stint a lot quicker and throughout the whole race really. Been running at a similar pace to Eric Verdorf. They've been running together for most of the race, having a good little battle. Verdorf made a good move on Van Katrick, but he's not been able to pull away from him, so he's still probably going to be a bit of a threat for Verdorf as when the LMP2 cars comes down the inside there, going into Madison Avenue on him. But yeah, those 2 drivers are driving very close, so the battle for the second place in GT2 is also far from solved.
To run through your list of retirements in this race so far, Kevin Riley is out of the race. Ricky Latalo is out of the race. We saw his incident down into turn number 4. Nick Ricci out of the race. We saw his incident as well. Marco Acadonio is out of the race, as is Tim Claysons. But we haven't had, David, a single GT1 driver retire out of this race yet. There's some very good driving skill going on in the Corvette world right now.
Yeah, the Corvette guys are top class at the moment, especially Florian and April. They're really battling hard. I'm just watching this battle unfold here. But yeah, the GT1 guys, I recognise a lot of the names, and they're all of different skill levels, but they all know how to drive.
And right now, Kei Koshube, a problem actually for Eric Verdorf in that 6 car, and it looks as though he might have lost himself a position. Try and get word of exactly what happened to him, but he went on the grass. He took a very big detour actually across the track, and this was down into turn number 5A and 6.
He was avoiding Jonathan Fuller there and trying to come back on track.
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of tough for Eric Vadoff there, because he would have got the race lead, but of course he had to slow down a little bit to allow Fuller to go back past, because he took the corner essentially when he was off the racetrack and cut the corner and had to take a slow down penalty. But David, apart from that, he would be in the race lead right now. Importantly, however, he's closed that gap to Jonathan Fuller to less than 5 seconds.
Yeah, he was really charging then. It's not to say that he can't do that work and catch up again, but yeah, it was just unfortunate. I think Fuller. Not sure what happened to Fuller. I might have to go back and check that. But yeah, it was just unfortunate. Good avoiding action though.
And Dan, in all of that, you talk about opportunities, especially in a track like this. Bob Van Catwick actually lost a lot of time there.
Yeah, he's lost about 2 or 3 seconds. He's right behind him near enough, and also into the pits following that little off-track incident is Jonathan Fuller. So maybe the tyres are a bit too worn, or maybe there's another issue with the car. But Jonathan Fuller's into the pits. But yeah, Van Catwick certainly did lose a lot of time there to Vadoff on that last lap.
So Fuller is down onto pit road, and that gives the lead over to Eric Vadoff there. And Jonathan Fuller coming out pit road. David, that could just be the fact that he spun that car. Those tyres are always going to be toast for a lap or two after that. We're at the halfway point pretty much now. He might as well just make that pit stop.
Yeah, he could do. It's just going to play out into the strategy of whether he can get his tyres back cooled down enough so he can carry on. But yeah, like you say, it probably is a good idea that he actually comes down pit road, fills it up, and goes out again.
So we're approaching the halfway point of this race very quickly to run through your top 5 in each class. Of course, you'll see the top 9 drivers in each class on the left-hand side of your screen momentarily. But in LMP 2 World, it is Mads Burr leading the way by 20 seconds now over Roger Cronin. A further 5 seconds back is Nick Gleason in 3rd. Christios Palunius is in the 4th position. Arcadius Newman in 5th. Jan Rockenstar in the 6th position. Paul Ilbrink is in 7th, and places in 8th, and then Marco Acadonio and Ricky Radataro are out of the race. In GT1, it is Keiki Shube leading the way from Florian Denard, Richard Avery in 3rd, Marshall Winnie is in 4th, and Spaniel Leoto in 5th, and then Eric Vadoff leading the way in GT2 from Bob Van Catwick, Remote Blue Rouge from Jonathan Fuller, and Andy Frame in the 5th position. Jack Sedgwick has actually been able to move himself up into the 9th position also in the GT1 class, making the pass there on Kevin Parrish. Kevin Parrish, however, still looking racy. Bit confused right now about Kevin Parrish, Dan, because normally he's got more speed than this.
Yeah, Kevin Parrish he's currently running 4th in the championship for the GT1 car, so I think he'll be very disappointed to be in the position he's in. And Jack Sedgwick is also usually behind Kevin Parrish. We saw Jack Sedgwick involved in an accident at Zandvoort last week, so Sedgwick's doing well compared to that this week. But yeah, I think Kevin Parrish dropping down the field it's not what we usually expect to see, so it'd be interesting to see. Maybe he's got a few minor technical problems with the car.
And David, let's take us through the motions. When you're in a situation like this, you're not performing to the way that you expect to be. You sat down in the 10th position, as is Kevin Parrish right now. You've just been passed by Jack Sedgwick. How do you regroup as you come towards that first series of pit stops?
I think you just have to kind of get back into that flow. It's really difficult after.
Oh, no, into the wall goes Jack Sedgwick! And that was a huge lick there for Sedgwick. He's going to be out of the race. And he looks as though, from my angle, he caught the grass coming out of the S's, the uphill bend, turn number 10, the south bend there. He caught the grass, and that speared that car into the outside retaining wall. He is out of the race, Dan.
Remarkable. We're just talking there about Sedgwick having an incident at Zandvoort, and it's a curse to the commentator. I'm afraid. Sorry for that, Jack. He's just gone straight, made a little bit of an error. I think they're gone straight to the ball. I think David's got more to tell us about that incident.
Yeah, he actually clipped the curb. When you run up there, you can take a little bit of curb, but he got too greedy. What happens is it upsets the car, and you can see it. It was just started fishtailing it. Nothing he could do, and bang into the barrier.
And that's a little bit
over.
And that's a little bit like, David, what we saw in the ISOWC race at Watkins Glen earlier on today. You take a little bit too much of the curb, you get that car sideways, it's going to be game over. But for Sedgwick, that's going to be hugely disappointing for him, because he's running in a solid 9th position there, and now he's pretty much the second of the retirees in GT1 world, because Berka Kakra is scored as out of the race, but Sedgwick, classified all the way down in the 12th position. Hugely disappointing for him.
Yeah, he's going to be absolutely gutted. I mean, he's bringing it down pit road now, and the mechanics will go all over it and make sure it's okay before they send him back out. Hopefully they can get him back out there and he can score some points. And he just smashed it into the pit wall as well. So, and that's it. He's done.
And Dan, I believe you also have an update on Kasia in the GT1 class as well, Becky Kasia in the 19 car.
Yeah, Crasher's down here in pit lane. Looks like he's getting repairs on his car, and as David said, the 28 of Carol Shawish has hit the pit wall as well, so I think that's the car out of the race. But Becca Crasher is in the pits, and I think we'll come back out on this track.
Yeah, so Kyle Sholaguri also looking as though his date is going to be done. That might help Jack Sedgwick a little bit. Importantly for these races, of course, iRacing and safety rating is in effect. For those of you who are new to iRacing, these drivers are ranked by two things. Their safety rating, which the higher the safety rating, the more car classes that are open to them. And it's in some ways, and I say this very loosely, in some ways a representation of how safe a driver they are, but also they're measured by iRating as well. And for some of these drivers here today, David, especially people like Nick Prestige, they're going to take a very big lick in those two divisions.
Yeah, VIR is quite well known for taking hit on your safety rating just because of the nature of the track. Once you hit the grass, it's like being on ice, and you'll just slide forever until you end up hitting one of the retaining walls.
And don't forget, if you would like to become a part of iRacing, go to iRacing.com right now where you can get 50% off 3 months of online racing, valid for new memberships only. And you can experience the joy that is sim racing here on iRacing. Back to you, David.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to let you know that Florian and Richard are coming up on traffic now, and Florian didn't get a very good drive out there because he was caught up behind the GT car, and you got Richard Avery looking there. He just gets blocked in. That is what multi-class racing is about right there, using the other traffic to your advantage. I love it when you're...
It's not about picking your opportunities. It's about making sure that when you get to a point that another driver can have an opportunity, you've got a way to stop that. And right there, Florian Denard was like, okay, you might get the run, but anything you can do, I can do better. Florian Denard able to keep that second position right there over Richard Avery, and great using the traffic there to his advantage as well, David.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's really what I like to see, is when you're able to pin your opponent behind a slower car and there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. That was really good driving by Florian.
Those two drivers are working their way up down toward the Oak Tree corner once again. Also, Dan, it looks as though that Jonathan Bootle has had himself an off track there at turn number 3. That is down at NASCAR Bend, and he's got himself back onto the racetrack but lost himself a bit of time there.
Yeah, he lost a bit of time. He went very wide into the bend, went across the grass. Didn't lose too much time, but it's certainly not what he would have wanted. And also I noticed that Richard Avery and Florian Denard, the last few laps, they've been doing 142s, and Keika Shube is leading that Corvette class. He's been doing 143s, so it'll be interesting to see if that's just a traffic or if they actually... It's been over a few laps though, so it does make you wonder if maybe they might start to reel in Kashube a little bit, but we know how good of a driver Kashube is. Maybe he's just trying to manage his tyres.
Yeah, and we're approaching that series of pit stops. It should be coming soon. And for Keika Shube, of course, he wants to make sure he's in as good a position as possible. So if he needs to go an extra couple of laps or needs to come in a couple of laps early, he's got all of those options available to him. Right now, he's got himself a little bit of traffic that will come into play in about a couple of laps. Up with people like Jonathan Pullett and Robert DeRouge, but not much traffic in the way right now of GT1 race leader Keika Shube. Going to turn your attention back to the GT2 driver right now. On the GT2 position 5, that was Thomas van Boesel, I believe. He's been able to get himself up a position there. I'm just having a look back, and yeah, he's been able to get himself past Andy Frame in the battle for the 5th position. The 29 car of Andy Frame losing that position there, David, into turn number 1.
Yeah, that was quite strange. I'm not sure how that happened. But yeah, Andy Frame seems to be struggling at the moment. Maybe he's trying to save fuel? I don't know.
Well, of course, let's not forget, last week we had one of these races, once again 65 minutes, as are all races in the iRacing.com prototype GT series races, where we had one driver go just 2 laps before the end, before he made his series of pit stops. Now, when you compare that track to this week's track, in many ways you could argue that a couple of these drivers could consider doing a no-stop strategy. Of course, fuel mileage races, Dave, they are always the most boring of all races. You're spending more time looking at your fuel gauge than you are looking at the cars ahead of you. When you compare this track to Circuit Park Zandvoort, you've got, yes, you still give yourself some long straights, but you've also got a number of corners where you can actually save a lot of fuel if you know how to do so.
Yeah, a good way of saving fuel is get off the gas a little bit early before the braking zone and just let the car coast a few feet, and you do that over the course of like one lap or so, you're going to save a hell of a lot of fuel. So yeah, it's, and the amount of corners on this track as well, you know, really kind of allow you to coast, especially in the GT1 cars. It's you kind of wrestle the car into the corner, coast it round, and then plant the throttle again. So as you can see, the guys, when they're coming out the corners, they do get a little bit squirrely, but that's because they're trying to manage a 600 brake in something that weighs about 600 kilograms.
Oh god, yeah. And let's not forget, 3 different car classes on here for those of you who are just joining us. We're approaching the 45-minute distance here in the iRacing.com Prototype GT Challenge Series here from Virginia International Raceway. Story of the day so far, Ricky Radicalo didn't make the grid in time. He had started from the rear of the LMP field. In fact, he's behind all the GT1 cars as well. He was out of the race very early on in that number 2 car. Also, in GT2, Nick Vestigi in that number 8 car had been involved in an incident early on, putting himself out of the race, which meant that Eric Vadorf is able to take the GT2 race lead. Mads Berhalver still leads away in the LMP1 class, Roger Cronin by a gap of 27 seconds right now. Case Shuby is dominated in the GT1 class, and I say Eric Vadorf's been able to pretty much dominate right now in the GT2 class. But let's go back very quickly to that 65-minute pit window situation. Do you expect, Dan, any driver to try and make it on 0 stops?
I'll have to go back to that quickly because the battle between Avery and Denard is back underway, and Avery is going to try and go round.
Oh!
He's onto the grass. That's not what he wanted. Now he's got a GT2 in the way as well. Avery probably getting a little bit impatient there, but his bit of lack of judgment seems to go on the grass. He's lost a lot of time there. It's about a second and a half, 2 seconds. So now he's going to have to try and do all that hard work again to get right in the back of him.
Yeah, it's so difficult on that. I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to do the switchback so he could get a bit better drive, but you brake so late onto that corner anyway. You brake any later and you just seen what happened. That's really unlucky from Avery, but I'm sure he can get onto the back of Denard again, no problem.
So that's going to be a huge cost for Richard Avery, and let's not forget as well, as we get closer and closer to these guys doing pit stops. He goes wide once again, and this time he's going to have to be very careful to keep it out of the wall. I was just about to say, as we get closer and closer to pit stops, the last thing you're going to want to do is lose that car and cost yourself a couple of seconds that could be vital a little bit later on. What Avery has done right now, David, he's taken that pressure away from Florian Denard, so that when Denard makes his pit stop, he doesn't have to be as aggressive, not only coming onto pit road, but also getting onto his marks in his pit box, and then coming out pit road as well. So right now, Avery, he's lost out twice, once on track position, once on strategy.
And also he's got Marcel Weimers not far behind him at all, because there's a LMP car and a GT2 car, and that's all that now separates the the third and fourth place car in the class. And as you were saying earlier, Will, you asked me about people trying to go without making a pit stop. I think in this race there'll be at least one person who maybe tries to take a bit of a gamble, especially if they're a bit close and they think that if they can conserve enough fuel they can do it. But I wouldn't rule out somebody trying it, but it'd be quite a risky move, I think, really.
Risky move indeed, but you know, in this race with about 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes left to go, this is a time of the race, David, where you will start taking a little bit more of risky moves. But however, at the same time, you don't want to throw a race away with less than 25% of it left to go. Yeah,
exactly. The cars become light as well. The characteristics of how they handle change. So a lot of the guys are experienced and they've probably already done a couple of fuel runs during practice sessions to work out what's going to happen as the race goes on. But if you're pushing really hard and making these mistakes as well, your tyres get worn out, and then when the car becomes lighter, it just becomes so difficult to handle, and then you just kind of like everything compounds into another because you make one mistake and that mistake ends up being another mistake, and so on and so on. So Richard's got a lot of work to do. But I noticed that Marcel was already catching them earlier. He was there or thereabouts, hovering in the background. So the GT1 class is really close at the moment.
And also, Matt Burr's pitted, Pano Laniotto has pitted, and Ridley has pitted as well. So, Dan, pit road become a little bit of a busy place.
Yeah, pit road is getting a bit busy, and also these drivers want to make sure their pit stops are perfect.
Sorry, Avery just went off again on the last corner.
So I think he's struggling with tyre right now.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier, David, how you said he was saving his tyres. I think once he got right up to the Flowing Denard again, he pushed that car a little bit too hard, and now it's all coming undone for him. In fact, I'm going to have a quick look at Marco Wieners, because he's starting to close him in. That gap right now is only about 4 seconds on the racetrack. Wieners could still have third position away if Avery is not careful.
Totally agree. I mean, this GT class is actually probably the most interesting racing on track at the moment, because they're so evenly matched and close together that one slight mistake from any of them and everything could be turned on its head.
So we're approaching 15 minutes left in this race. Dan, it shows, especially in these GT cars, you cannot push too hard unless you know you can get the job done. And I think that Avery honestly thought in his head that he could get that pass done on Florian Denard. Put a lot of effort into doing so. Didn't make it happen. And now he's on the back foot and he could risk losing that third position as Christos Polinius going sideways, and he's going to have to go all the way down. He almost had to go down this side pit road there. He lost so much time. And he looked like 6 seconds there. And that's going to put him closer to the clutches of Arcadius Newman in the battle for the 4th position in LMP2 class.
Yeah, as you said before, Will, I think it's the end of the run, and people are starting to find out now that their cars maybe are not quite up to what they were earlier in the race, and these are little mistakes and there's some little things going wrong which weren't going wrong before. Richard Avery in particular, 2 or 3 in the space of a couple of laps. Don't know whether it's all car, maybe after the first couple his head isn't quite in the right place. He just needs to knuckle back down and get the concentration back, because that also can be a factor in this race. It's 65 minutes long. Concentration levels as the race go on could get a bit lower, but I think in Richard Avery's case it's more likely that the car is not quite as it was at the beginning of the race.
Bob Van Katwick takes the race lead in the GT2 class away from Eric Vadoff, as Eric Vadoff makes that journey down onto pit road to make his first and only pit stop of the day. We expect Bob Van Katwick perhaps come down onto pit road in the next couple of laps, but again, Dave, it's not a guarantee with these sort of things. And Van Katwick, he might actually try and stretch it out as long as possible. I mean, we've got less than 15 minutes of this race. Let's translate that into laps. That's only about 6 laps away to the finish right now. And from Katwick, he's been very careful with that car, is what I can say. He lost position to Eric Vadoff earlier on in this race, but he's been very careful the way he's been driving that car. And in that GT2 Hankook car, you never know, he might try and go to the end in there.
Yeah, I don't see why he can't. This is all playing down to strategy within the GT2 class at the moment. But Vadoff's a very quick driver, so I can't see him not winning this. But having said that, he just got a little bit loose coming under the oak tree.
And meanwhile, Avery is struggling right now, Dan, with Michael Wiemers, and Wiemers is caught up to the rear of him now. This is what I was talking about. Avery's been pushing that car so hard. If I was Avery, I probably would have come down to pit road perhaps 3 laps ago. These guys are going to have to make it, and now Avery comes down to pit road. And ahead of him, though, we see another car as well. That is Bob Van Katwick, who will give that GT2 race lead back to Eric Vadoff. And also, we have Kei Kashibe on pit road in GT1 World, and also Florian Denard.
Yeah, top 4 in the GT1s are in the pits. Kashibe, Denard, Avery, Wiemers, and Denard's also He's got away Kashibe and Donado away. It's been interesting to see what happens in this battle for third place. So we must be able to get in front out of Avery. I don't think he quite is able to. Richard Avery will keep that third place. It'll be interesting now to see if he'll be able to catch up to Florian Donado. I think the mistakes he's made already mean that he's going to have to try and settle for third place if he can keep off Marcel Weimers. I think second place is probably a bit gone beyond him now from these earlier mistakes and before the pit stop.
Kieran Pearce, though, is renowned for his fuel-saving abilities. I remember we were racing in a 1 Series in the TFR Super Cup, and it was everyone pitted. We did like 5-10 laps before him, and he somehow managed to save so much fuel he could bring it to the end. So this is probably what he's doing here, and he's got himself up into the 4th position. So I don't know if he's going to make it to the end. It's going to be tight. It's going to be really tight. But if anyone can do it, Kieran can.
And of course, we had ourselves a fuel-saving race in the ISOWC Indy Grand Prix of the Glen. If you missed that, don't forget you can keep in contact with all of our races by going to our YouTube channel. That is by going to youtube.com/GlacierTV archives. We can see pretty much everything that we've ever done on Glacier TV, all the way back from 2012. Meanwhile, Kei Kashibe is back into the race lead in the GT1 class, who will be very shortly anyway. Florian Denard lost a bit of time, but I'm getting word that Kashibe might have actually overshot his pit box a little bit. Doesn't make any real difference, but it's one of those things that, you know, a mistake, David, can happen at any particular time on this racetrack, as Nick Thiesen's down onto pit road.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to make a mistake, overshooting your pit box is probably not the worst thing that could happen, but he'd had such a gap anyway, and he's such a quick driver. He'll be able to like pull it out again. But this GT1 class is really closed up now, and I'm getting word that Eric is Weimers.
Weimers, yes. Let's have a look at Weimers there. He's trying to make that pass on Richard Avery. We're going to go over to that immediately. Avery is struggling so much. Weimers going to look down to the inside as they come down into left hook corner, completing the pass there and move him up a position over Richard Avery. And Avery's day, Dan, is going from bad to worse.
Definitely is, Will. I can tell you that. It's maybe a bad set of tyres there for Richard Avery. That was just Marcel Weimers has decided now is his time to try and push to get into that position. I'm pretty interested and intrigued now to see what happens with Kieran Pearce. I've got to say, will he be able to carry on the rest of the race? He's a Yorkshireman from Huddersfield, and it'll be interesting to see if he'll be able to keep the Yorkshire spirit, Bulldog spirit up, and be able to keep it in the track, or if he will have to pit. But I know Kieran will definitely try and keep it on track for as long as possible, and as David said, he could very well go to the end.
Meanwhile, Roderick Cronin bringing his car from the race lead of the LMP2 cars onto pit road, which hands that race lead back to Mads Burr in the number 18 GT Academy car. Roderick Cronin going to get himself, he's not going to get tyres, fuel only there for Roderick Cronin. And Dave, you lose a lot of time over taking tyres here on this racetrack, but at the same time you can gain quite a bit of time with fresh tyres, especially late on in the race. But I'm guessing right now all these drivers have gone too long in to make it viable for them to do that.
Yeah,
Cronin goes off.
Oh yeah, he's just gone off in front of Kieran now, so I'm not sure what happened. I think he was trying to get past the GT1 traffic of Florian. So yeah, this means Kieran's really on it now, trying to catch him, see if he can get that second place. But yeah, he's on lighter fuel, worn out tyres. Florian's on heavier fuel, new tyres. So let's see how it pans out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be incredibly interesting, as we've got ourselves 10 minutes left to go here on the iRacing.com Prototype GT Challenge here from Virginia International Raceway. To run through your top 5 in each class has kind of started to sort itself out now. We've got Mads Burr leading the way in the LMP2 class, Nick Thiessen in second, Christios Panolius in the third position, and we've got Arcadius Newman there as well. In GT1 we have ourselves Kei Kashibe leading the way, Florian Denard second, Kieran Pearce in third, who, ladies and gentlemen, still hasn't pitted. Going to keep an eye out on Kieran Pearce, see if he's pitted yet, or whether he will pit shortly. Marcel Weimers in fourth, which is Avery now down into the fifth position. And in the GT2 class, Eric Vador first, Jonathan Fuller in second, Bothering Catlink in third, Robert Rouge in fourth, and Andy Frame running out your top 5. But David, let's go back to Kieran Peace. At what point do you throw caution to the wind and try and go all the way to the end? At what point are you going to have to dive down to pit road? And in fact, no, he's going down to pit road now, so that's going to throw my entire argument out the question. But it's one of those things as well that if you start saving fuel, you almost have to do it from the start of the race. But you can lose more time by saving fuel than having to come down to pit road towards the... You just go gang ho and make a pit stop when everyone else does.
The thing is, though, is he's not going to have to put that much fuel in to go to the end, so his quick stop will be quicker than the others, as you can see. He's
out of the way.
Coming out the pits now, so he's going to come out behind Kevin Parrish, I believe. So this is going to... He's battling with Kevin, really, to see if he can get that.
Yeah, and Dan, we talked about how bad Kevin Parrish was doing earlier on. He's ready to rally now back into a 6th position. We believe he had an early pit stop in this race, but it's kind of worked out okay for him. When you have a look at where he qualified in this race, Kevin Parrish, in that number 11 car, he did qualify all the way down the field and pretty much 3rd from bottom in GT1. And now he's running up in the top half of the field. He's going to have to take that as pretty much a good day's work for him.
Yeah, I think he will. Obviously, some drivers prefer tracks, some other tracks to others, and maybe this is a track that Kevin doesn't particularly like or doesn't particularly do very well at, and it's one where maybe he cuts his losses and takes a top 5-6 finish as a job well done, because we know at other tracks he can be on the pace and be on the podium, but maybe it's just one track that Kevin Parrish doesn't get on with.
And also, David, you talk about this race. This race, of course, is part of a 12-week series where 8 of your 12 races are counted. Now, a bad day for Kevin Parrish it may be, but still, he's getting himself some good points. And when you put that into the championship picture, it relieves that pressure on him later on in the season if he has a bad race and does like what Nick Prestige does and has a moment early on in the race and completely throws his race away.
Yeah, but you don't want to get into the habit of having bad races. I mean, I know he's having a bad race today, but VIR is a really tough track regardless of what car you're in driving around here. But yeah, back to what you're saying, you don't really want to be having bad days because it puts dampers on things, and it does. You say it doesn't put any pressure on you, but it actually does, because it's always there nagging in the back of your mind that you've had a bad day at the office and you've got to try and perform that a little bit better at the next track.
There's a car off as well, big heavy damage. It's a number 32 of Jan Watson car from the LMP2 class. Heavy damage to the front of that car, and that was the straight between NASCAR bend and left.
And it's costing Kevin Parrish. And that's costing Kevin Parrish. I'm thinking Parrish might actually get some damage out of that as well. And that's one of those things where, you know, yes, you're driving a damaged race car, and Kevin Parrish right now, he's going to be so early on the brakes in this section. It's going to cost him so much time. You see, now he gets past Watson car, but it costs him so much time. It's allowed Kieran Peace to close up as well. And on a long lap like this, for Watson car to try and bring that car down towards pit road, David, that's going to cost him a ton of time and also put himself into a lot of danger of other cars, as we just saw.
Yeah, it's completely destroyed the front end of that car. I'm actually surprised that it's still moving, but yeah, he's got to tiptoe it round here onto the long straight, which won't be too bad, but going down towards the pits, it's so twisted down there, it's going to be like a mobile chicane in a corner. It's yeah, he should just park it up. His day's over anyway.
And we're seeing a replay up on your screen momentarily, the GlacierTV X-Cam coming back into play. And it was just one of those slide jobs. Once again, he came out of turn before the left hook corner and slammed into wall, lost that front end of that car. And Dan, let's take away that moment of Kevin Parrish and let's talk about how annoying it will be for him. He's raced for what, 1 hour and about 1 hour of this race, and to have it thrown away with less than 10 minutes left to go. He's going to lose position to Paul Ilbrink. Luckily, he won't lose any more than that because all the other cars are out of the race. It'll be hugely annoying for him.
Yeah, it really is annoying. Also, Kevin Parrish should be very annoyed as well, because if he has any damage to his car, it's going to cost him. He's not just got Kieran Peace, but Lee Van Draconen is also there as well. So we were just talking about Kevin Parrish having a 6th place finish, but that could go down to 8th place for an act that purely wasn't his own, and that's got to be really annoying for the driver, knowing that he's had a bit of a tough race, put it back together, and then through no fault of his own, there's a risk of it. But he also got a feel for Scar as well, just a little bit. It's so close to the end to have that happen to him, and I think, as David said, it might have been better to just pull it off, because I don't think the pits will be able to prepare that car in time, and he's also, as a result of his driving, caused other drivers a bit of a problem, especially Kevin Parrish. So maybe that's not the best thing to do for Washington car. Maybe he should have just pulled it over and that been the end of his race there and then, because I don't think there's much else he'll get from this race.
And of course, the iRacing Sporting Code does come into play there as well. For those of you, of course, who are new to iRacing, haven't maybe been a part of iRacing before, these drivers are binded by the first iRacing.com Sporting Code. And one of those things, David, is that you can't drive a damaged car around the racetrack. Yes, you might just be trying to bring it back down towards pit road, but as we saw there, the Robertson car, he did almost ruin the race there of Kevin Parrish, and that's one of the things that people like Nimcross Jr., Shannon Whitmore, the people who look at competition, look at all of these incidents on the racetracks when they get protests. It's one of those things they look for. Not are you driving a damaged car, but are you impeding someone else's ability to have a fair and clean race?
Yeah, he's back out on the track again, but there's still no nose on the car, so it's going to be hugely slow, because it will have zero downforce. I mean, the error on those cars is what makes them quick. If you take away that, you don't have anything.
Yeah, you're pretty much just driving a car with lots of horsepower. In fact, it makes it even more difficult to turn than the Ford GT. And you see the car ahead of him. That's the GT1 car of, of Leave and Drogginen, who's currently scored all the way down in the GT1 class in the 8th position, where he's pulling away from Ratzencar so much. And in fact, Eric Vadoff is catching him right now, as Mads Berg just puts a lap there on Eric Vadoff, your GT2 leader, once again. We're into the closing stages of this race. Let's talk about Mads Berg a little bit, because he has had a standout race here once again in that 18 car. He's got a 35-second gap over Roger Cronum, and even taking away Ricky Adataulo, Mads Berg's just been absolutely dominant.
Yeah, he just absolutely disappeared from the word go. He was.
And having a look back at Roger Cronin as well, he's done a standout drive for himself. He's 13 seconds ahead of Nick Thiessen. But very quickly, having a look at Jonathan Bootle in the GT2 class, he's trying to close down Andy Frame with these couple of laps. And last time by, Jonathan Bootle did a 1 minute 51.150. Compare that to a 1 minute 51.719 for Andy Frame. And in these last couple of laps, Jonathan Bootle trying to close a position up there, Dan.
Oh, Mads Berg, then he got involved with the slower car of Rustenskar. He's gone back into the pits again, but a very tense moment there for Mads Berg coming out the last corner. He nearly went straight into the back end of the slower car. Now, what's the question you asked me before, Will?
I was talking about Jonathan Bootle closing down on Andy Frame the last couple of laps, but that goes back down to show, David, about what the Sporting Code is all about. And it's this whole thing as well, making sure these slow drivers who've got damage to the race car, don't impede the race leader. And almost there, Mads Berg, who's had a dominant drive, almost lost his entire race there.
Yeah, just ridiculous. You know, if your car's that badly damaged that you're going to be slower than everyone else, it's best just to park it up, I think. Hopefully his pit crew are looking over and not going to send him back out again.
By the way, we are approaching the white flag here. It's going to be very close, actually, to go for Mads Berg. Get the white flag on this lap or the next lap. We'll keep an eye out on that, but Mads Berg currently working his way through the Oak Tree corner. This is, as I say, turn number 11 and 12 on the racetrack. Now he works himself down Madison Avenue. Once again, the back straight away as he approaches the roller coaster corner, one of the fastest sections of this racetrack. You see the elevation change, and he's not going to make it, so this will be the white flag lap now for Mads Berg. So we're going to turn our attention over to him as he makes his way through roller coaster for what we believe will be the final time of this race. Now down into the last couple of corners as he approaches the Hog Pen, which will be the final corner of this race for him. He's got lap traffic ahead of him. That won't come into play for him at all. We'll get confirmation in a couple of seconds. He now goes past some of this lap traffic, but it looks as though, no, actually he will do one more lap. So this time by the white flag will be handed for Mads Berg. And Dan, for fuel strategy, some of these drivers will be right now cringing, especially if they were right on the limit of a fuel number.
Yeah, especially if they were, as you said, near the end of the fuel mileage. They might have only compensated for that extra one, but we're hearing word that he beat it by just 1 second. So Mads Berg has managed to put out an extra lap out of this race just by a second. So But yeah, hopefully we won't have a similar situation to the ISO WC that was prior to this race, where many cars ran out of fuel at the last lap. So hopefully people haven't left it that close to the marker for this time and are playing a game of fuel like roulette, as they say.
And I never understand this, but on the last lap, you know, if you're just a couple of seconds away, what's the difference of just parking the back car, slowing it down, allowing the checkered flag to come out? But for Mads, I'm guessing he's just having fun out there right now, David.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, with that gap, he can even come in and do another pit stop. His pace has just been extraordinary. But yeah, he's having some fun out there. He's enjoying himself. Not taking anything away from the other prototype drivers, but yeah, Mad was in a class of one of his own.
Of course, that all started when Riccardo Italo failed to make it to the grid on time. He had to start this race from the rear of the field. He was able to get out of pit road ahead of all the GT2 drivers, but behind all of the GT1 drivers, and involved in an incident very early on in this race which put him out of contention. Made life a lot easier for Mads Burr in that number 18 car, but this time now Mads Burr comes out of Hogben corner for what is the final time, and he is going to win the iRacing.com Prototype GT Challenge here from Virginia International Raceway, and he will take race victory by 38 seconds over Roderick Cronin. He's currently working himself down Madison Avenue for the final time. Meanwhile, we're going to check in with your GT2 race leader, Eric Vadoff. He's going to come now through the final couple of corners for the final time. He comes now down towards Hogben corner to take victory in the GT2 class, and it's been a standout drive also by Eric Vadoff, of course, gifted a little bit of that by Nick Prestige, who had an incident early on in this race, but no foot put wrong at all there by Eric Vadoff, as he made a move earlier on in this race over Bob Van Katwijk and managed to get himself up into that position. And also in the last lap of this race, it looks as though, David, that Kevin Parrish is trying to close up on Stefano Leniotto, who looks like he might be a little bit light on fuel.
Yeah, I think there's some definite fuel saving coasting going on there. I don't think he's going to get in towards the end, but yeah, no, he's not. They're on the long back straight. There's no chance. So yeah, Florian and Kay pretty much first and second there. Marcel Weimer's going to take the third place. Unfortunately, Richard Avery in fourth. Is a brave effort, but he just couldn't quite get it all together at the end.
Yeah, so Richard Avery comes to our start finish line in the GT1 class, and he will come home in the fourth position in this race. Going to keep an eye out very quickly at Stefano Leniotto in the free car. Indeed, he does just have enough fuel to coast it across the line. He'll come home in the fifth position, with Kevin Parrish coming home in the sixth spot. And then Kieran Peace already was scored laps down, so those guys have already finished the race. Waiting now for the last couple of cars to come past the start finish line before we bring you final race results here from Virginia International Raceway. But gonna have to ask you first, David, and then Dan, in turn, who is your driver of the race?
Can we pick one from each class? Because I'm between everyone. Oh, Mads.
I think I'm going to go for Mads as well. He did very well actually. He's not made a single mistake, I don't think, all race. He's really dominated the field, just say. But also, Keiko Shube in a very similar for the Corvettes. He's also does not put really a foot wrong, and he's got another victory. So those two drivers stand out for me. There's some also in GT2, although there wasn't as many of them as the GT1s and LMP2. There are actually some quite good battles out. I enjoyed watching the battle with Vidal from Bob Van Katwijk as well, and also Robert DeRouge. He was never really. We don't think we spoke about him much at all in the race, but he's come home in fourth place, so we'll be quite happy with that finish as well. But I think overall, really, we've seen some really good racing in 65 minutes at Virginia International Raceway. We've seen all sorts of drama. We've seen incidents. We've seen people make mistakes. We've seen all sorts. Really, it's a great overtaking, and no, I think Mads Burr definitely has been the class above everybody today, though.
And
so there
go on. I'm talking now. It's okay. I'm back. To run through your final race results there. First of all, with the LMP2 class, Mads Burr taking victory in a time of 1 hour 6, 41 seconds, by 36 seconds almost there over Roderick Cronin in the second position. Nick Thiessen a further 13 seconds back in third, as I'm just seeing a car doing some amazing donuts. That is Jonathan Bootle there in the GT2 class. Then in fourth position, Arcadius Newman. Fifth is Christian Polonius. In sixth is Paul Ilbrink. Seventh is Jan Rossenkar. In eighth is Tim Claessens. Ninth is Marco Acadonio. And then 10th, starting this race from the rear of the field, Riccardo Taulo out of the race. GT1 World, Kei Kashube taking race victory from Florian Denard, and Michael Wieners in third, Richard Avery in fourth, Tapano Leniote in fifth, Kevin Parrish in sixth, Kieran Peace in seventh, leaving Drogoning in eighth, Peter Ridley in ninth, and Patrick Berry running at your top 10. Then three other drivers in the GT1 class. Then moving over to your GT2 class is Eric Vadoff taking race victory from Jonathan Fuller. Bob Van Koutwijk struggled down into third position in the end, Robert de Rouge in fourth, Thomas Van Bootle in fifth, Jonathan Bootle in sixth, Andy Frame seventh, Nick Vestigi in eighth, and then Kevin Reilly running out your GT2 field. David, the Green Hell once again struck today. It took out Nick Vestigi, took out Ricciardo Taulo, almost caused Kevin Parrish in this shoe, but this track, we talked about how hard it is, and it proved itself once again here today.
Yeah, it's a really tough track, but I like to think of it as a driver's track. You know, there are some really challenging sections on there, and when you get them right and you get into the flow, it feels really rewarding. Definitely worth a track to be driving, and especially with the other section where we could have the infield, the infamous east-west section, but. Yeah, it was good racing. I enjoyed it, especially with the GT1 guys. They were really going at it. Some nice driving. Shame about Riku not being able to get on the grid, and I would have liked to have seen those Riku and Mads have a good battle. And Nick was just so unfortunate. You know, it's just unfortunately you have to say that's GT racing at the end of the day, and he'll be back at it in the next round.
And of course, Dan, we won't be bringing you any coverage of next week's race because of the Neo Endurance Series. However, in 2 weeks' time, this series heads over to Road America. And for our broadcast there, it's going to be crazy down at Road America, as it always is. Perhaps one of the best GT tracks to go to. But with these three types of cars together, going to be very interesting. It's a long track, but with long straightaways means that you get a lot of overtaking, a lot of lapping, a lot of fierce battles on the racetrack.
Yeah, I think the drivers will be quite looking forward to that one, especially with the, as you said, the long straights. It might help with the lappery situation, but also will help with the passing in general.
So then, upcoming races here on Glacier TV, and of course, we've got ourselves tomorrow the VIR GT Series commentary available in both English and German. That start time for that is tomorrow night from about 7:15 GMT. Then also on Tuesday, the final round of the 16th Street Racing League. Young O has the title in his hands already. However, still a lot to sort out there for second, third, and fourth positions, and that will be the Michigan 400 this coming Tuesday. The Neo Endurance Series will be coming to you next Sunday here on Glacier TV, and don't forget our coverage of the iRacing.com Road World Championship Series that will be starting in a couple of weeks' time here on Glacier TV. Don't forget also, next week, we won't be having any coverage of the Prototype GT Series because of the fact we'll be bringing you the first round of the Neo Endurance Series. That will be starting at 6 p.m. GMT, and that will be at Sebring International Raceway with all the cars that you've seen here today, the LMP2 HBD ARX, the GT1 Corvette C6R, and also the GT2 Ford GT, and that will be coming to you next Sunday. In the meanwhile, from myself, Will Vincent, from Yoni Backman, from David Ward and Dan Blake, it's time to say good evening to you. So we'll talk to you a little bit later on.